The glittering chandeliers of the Royal Palm Miami reflected off the polished marble floors, casting dancing lights across Aurora Jensen's face as she balanced a tray of champagne flutes. 6 glasses, each worth more than her daily wage, teetering precariously as she navigated through the sea of designer dresses and tailored suits. Another exclusive party, another night of watching Miami's elite indulge while she counted the hours until her mother's next doctor's appointment. "Remember to smile, sweetie," Monica, the head waitress, whispered as she passed. "The tips tonight could be your mom's next prescription." Aurora's lips curved automatically, though her blue eyes retained their determined focus. She didn't need the reminder. Every shift at the Royal Palm was a careful performance. Keep the smile gentle, the posture perfect, the uniform pristine. Don't let them see the exhaustion from pulling double shifts, or how your feet ache in these mandatory high heels. The crystal glasses clinked softly as she approached a group of Brazilian investors. Their laughter echoed across the grand ballroom, a stark contrast to the quiet of her mother's hospital room this morning. Elizabeth had been having one of her better days, chatting about the romance novel Aurora had brought her, pretending the dark circles under her eyes weren't getting deeper. "More champagne, gentlemen?" Aurora's voice carried the warmth she'd perfected over 2 years of service, just friendly enough to earn good tips without inviting unwanted attention. As she distributed the glasses, a flash of movement caught her. The crowd parted like waves before a ship's bow, and she glimpsed what had caused the subtle shift in the room's energy. Maddox Christopher Hale had arrived. She'd never seen him in person before, but everyone in Miami knew his face. The business magazines called him the Ice King, the billionaire CEO who'd turned his father's failing shipping company into a global empire before he'd turned 30. The society pages preferred to focus on his looks, the sharp gray eyes, the perfectly trimmed dark beard, the kind of presence that demanded attention without trying. Aurora forced herself to look away, focusing on collecting empty glasses. She didn't need the distraction of another rich man who thought the world revolved around him. She had enough on her plate, literally and figuratively. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who checked on Elizabeth during Aurora's night shifts. "Your mom's fever is back. Nothing serious. Gave her the meds. Don't worry, mi cielo. Focus on work." Aurora's fingers tightened around the tray. Don't worry, as if she'd done anything else since the diagnosis 18 months ago. As if every moment wasn't split between working, caring for her mother, and trying to keep their small apartment from falling apart around them. She glanced at her watch. 4 more hours until her shift ended. Then the late-night bus ride home, a few hours of sleep, and back to the morning shift at the beachfront cafe. The endless cycle that kept them barely afloat. "You there, waitress?" The sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "We need service at the VIP section." Aurora turned, already moving toward the cordoned-off area. The hotel manager, Mr. Richards, stood at the velvet rope, his round face flushed with the particular anxiety he reserved for their most important guests. Behind him, she could see Maddox Hale holding court, surrounded by men in suits worth more than her yearly salary. "Jensen, thank God." Richards grabbed her arm as she approached, his voice low and urgent. Mr. Hale's personal assistant called ahead with specific requirements. "Everything must be perfect. You're my best server, don't let me down." Aurora nodded, falling into the familiar rhythm. "Check your appearance. Blonde waves still neatly pulled back, lipstick fresh, uniform spotless. Adjust your smile. Professional, pleasant, invisible." These men didn't want to see a real person serving them, just a perfectly efficient machine. She approached the VIP section, tray ready. The conversation dulled as she entered their space, as though she'd stepped through an invisible barrier. These were the men who ran Miami, who made decisions affecting thousands of lives over glasses of $100 champagne. And at their center sat Maddox Hale, radiating the kind of authority that came from never having heard the word no. His custom suit fit like armor, Rolex glinting under the chandeliers as he gestured to emphasize some point. Even seated, he dominated the space around him. Then he turned, and those steel-gray eyes locked onto her with laser focus. Aurora felt the impact like a physical force. For a moment, the noise of the party faded, and she found herself caught in his gaze. There was something unnerving about the way he looked at her, not with the usual dismissive glance reserved for service staff, but with an intensity that seemed to strip away her carefully maintained facade. She broke the contact first, moving smoothly to distribute fresh glasses. Years of practice kept her hands steady, her movements graceful. Don't let them see you're affected. Don't give them that power. You're new. His voice was deep, carrying naturally over the ambient noise. Not a question, but a statement that expected confirmation. I've worked here 2 years, Mr. Hale. Aurora kept her tone professionally neutral, though something in her rebelled at his assumption. She wasn't new. He was just finally noticing her existence. A slight frown creased his forehead, as though her answer had disrupted his worldview. 2 years? At the Royal Palm? Yes, sir. She finished placing the last glass, anxious to escape his scrutiny. Will there be anything else? He studied her for another long moment, and she felt the weight of unspoken calculations behind those gray eyes. What was he seeing? The tired young woman behind her professional mask? The worry lines she carefully concealed with makeup? The way her uniform had been taken in to accommodate recent weight loss? That will be all. He dismissed her with a slight nod, already turning back to his companions. For now. Aurora retreated, her heart pounding despite her best efforts to remain unmoved. There had been something in those last 2 words, a promise or perhaps a warning, that sent a shiver down her spine. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Aurora ducked behind a pillar to check it, her fingers trembling slightly as she swiped open the message. Dr. Carlton called. They can move up your mom's treatment if you can make the deposit by Friday. Friday. 3 days away. Aurora's mind raced through calculations she'd already done 100 times. Her savings, her next paycheck, the tips, from tonight. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. She squared her shoulders, tucking the phone away. She couldn't afford to think about that now. The party was in full swing, and these glasses wouldn't serve themselves. She had a job to do, bills to pay, a mother to save. But as she moved back into the crowd, she could feel those gray eyes following her. Maddox Hale might be used to owning everything he surveyed, but Aurora Jensen had learned long ago that some things weren't for sale: her pride, her independence, her sense of self. She just hoped she could hold on to them all. The private suite on the top floor of the Royal Palm made Aurora feel like an intruder in someone else's dream. Everything gleamed. The crystal decanters arranged on silver trays, the floor-to-ceiling, windows offering a panoramic view of Miami's glittering skyline, the imported marble that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical bill. VIP service requested in Suite 1801, Mr. Richards had said, thrusting a bottle of Macallan 25 into her hands. Mr. Hale's personal guest. Discretion is paramount. Now, standing outside the mahogany double doors, Aurora took a steadying breath. The weight of the scotch, worth several months' rent, reminded her why she was here. Friday's deadline loomed, and premium service meant premium tips. She couldn't afford to let Maddox Hale's unsettling presence throw her off balance. She knocked, professional smile already in place. Enter. The voice was feminine, cultured, with a hint of impatience. Aurora pushed open the door to find a woman perched on one of the suite's Italian leather sofas. She wore a red designer dress that hugged every curve, diamonds dripping from her ears and throat. Finally, the woman sighed, checking a diamond-encrusted watch. I was beginning to think I'd been forgotten. Pour me a drink, darling, and then we can discuss the arrangements. Aurora moved to the bar cart, her movements precise and practiced. Of course, ma'am. How would you prefer your scotch? Scotch? The woman laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Oh, honey, I don't touch the stuff. Champagne for me. And do hurry. Maddox doesn't like to be kept waiting. Aurora's hand faltered slightly as she reached for a champagne flute. Something felt off about this interaction, but she couldn't place what. Mr. Hale requested this specific bottle of Macallan. Mr. Hale requested a companion for the evening, not a bartending lesson. The woman stood, smoothing her dress. Though I must say the uniform is a nice touch, very authentic. The champagne bottle nearly slipped from Aurora's fingers as understanding dawned. Her cheeks burned with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. This woman thought she was, and Mr. Richards had sent her up here knowing. "There's been a mistake," Aurora said, setting down the bottle with more force than necessary. "I'm a waitress, an actual employee of the Royal Palm." The woman's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Oh, sweetie, there's no need to stay in character. Maddox's tastes are well known in certain circles. Pretty young thing, working class. Background, touch of innocence." She waved a manicured hand. "You've got the look down perfectly, though the pride might be laying it on a bit thick." Aurora's fingers curled into fists at her sides. The insult burned deeper than the woman probably realized, striking at every insecurity she'd fought to overcome. Every time someone had looked at her and seen only her face, her body, a thing to be bought and sold. "I am not for sale," she said, her voice low and fierce. "And you can tell Mr. Hale that if he wants to arrange that kind of company, he should look elsewhere." The woman's amused expression faltered. "You really are?" The suite's door swung open. Maddox Hale filled the doorway, his commanding presence seeming to shrink the luxurious space. His gray eyes took in the scene. Aurora's rigid posture, the woman's startled face, the untouched bottles on the bar cart. "Victoria." His voice could have frozen Miami Bay. "I wasn't aware you'd be here." The woman, Victoria, recovered, quickly sliding into a practiced smile. "Darling, I thought I'd save you the trouble of making arrangements, though there seems to have been some confusion with your entertainment for the evening." Aurora had never felt more humiliated in her life. The assumption that she was for sale, that she was part of some practiced game for rich men's amusement, it struck at something deep and vulnerable inside her. "The only confusion," Maddox said, his gaze fixed on Aurora with an intensity that made her breath catch, "is your presence in my suite. Leave." Victoria's smile cracked. "Maddox, surely you don't mean now." The word carried the weight of absolute authority. Victoria gathered her clutch and swept past him, the door clicking, shut behind her with finality. Silence stretched between them. Aurora could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, could see her own reflection fractured in the window's glass. Blonde hair escaping its neat twist, cheeks flushed with anger, and something else she didn't want to name. "Ms. Jensen." Maddox's voice was carefully controlled. "I assure you, this was not my doing." "Really?" The word escaped before she could stop it, sharp with disbelief. "Because according to your friend, this is exactly your type. Pretty young things playing dress-up as working class. Is that why you were watching me at the party? Calculating how much I'd cost?" She saw something flash in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or surprise at being challenged. He took a step forward, and Aurora fought the urge to step back. "You're making assumptions," he said, each word precise as a knife's edge. "Dangerous ones." "I'm making assumptions?" Aurora gave a bitter laugh. "I'm not the one who had a high-class escort waiting to proposition hotel staff. Tell me, Mr. Hale, how many waitresses have you confused for something else?" She knew she should stop talking. This man could have her fired with a single word. But something had snapped inside her. All the fear and frustration of the past, months boiling over. "You're angry." He stated it like a fascinating observation, his head tilting slightly. "Most people in your position would be apologizing right now, trying to save their job. Most people in my position have never been mistaken for a prostitute in their workplace." The crude word felt foreign on her tongue, but she wanted it to hurt. "And I don't apologize for other people's mistakes." Maddox moved closer, and this time Aurora did step back, her hip hitting the bar cart. The crystal decanters chimed softly, a discordant note in the charged atmosphere. "No," he said, softly. I don't imagine you apologize for much of anything, Ms. Jensen. It's refreshing. The compliment threw her off balance. She'd expected threats, dismissal, maybe an insincere apology. Not this strange intensity, this focused attention that made her skin prickle with awareness. I should go. She needed to escape this suite, this man, this situation that was spiraling beyond her control. I have tables waiting. Of course. He stepped aside, clearing her path to the door, but as she moved past him, he spoke again. Though I find myself wondering what else you don't apologize for. Aurora paused, her hand on the doorknob. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the subtle notes of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her think of winter nights and dangerous decisions. I don't apologize for knowing my worth, she said, meeting his gaze one final time. Remember that, Mr. Hale, the next time you're making assumptions about hotel staff. She left before he could respond, her heels clicking rapidly against the marble floors as she fled to the service elevator. Only when the doors closed did she allow herself to shake, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Her phone buzzed, another message from Mrs. Rodriguez about her mother's medication. Reality crashed back like a wave, drowning the lingering tension of her encounter with Maddox Hale. She had more important things to worry about than billionaires and their games. Friday's deadline wasn't going to meet itself, and no amount of righteous anger would pay her mother's medical bills. But as she straightened her uniform and prepared to return to the party, she couldn't shake the memory of those gray eyes, watching her with an interest that felt dangerous as a storm on the horizon. Dawn painted Miami's skyline in shades of pink and gold as Aurora pushed through the entrance of Mount Sinai Medical Center. The morning shift at the beachfront cafe had ended early, a rare blessing that meant she could visit her mother before heading to the Royal Palm for another evening of avoiding Maddox Hale's penetrating stare. The hospital corridors held their usual morning bustle, nurses changing shifts, the squeak of cartwheels, the distant chime of call buttons. Aurora had walked these halls so many times she could navigate them blindfolded, could recognize the specific antiseptic smell of each wing, could name every nurse by their footsteps. Good morning, sunshine. Elizabeth Jensen's voice carried down the corridor before Aurora even reached her room. Despite everything, her mother's spirit remained undiminished, a beacon of light in the sterile hospital environment. Aurora paused in the doorway, drinking in the sight of her mother. Elizabeth sat propped up in bed, her silver-streaked blonde, hair pulled back in a neat braid, probably Mrs. Rodriguez's handiwork. She was reading one of the romance novels Aurora brought her weekly, the ones they used to giggle over together during better days. Mom, you're supposed to be resting. Aurora crossed to the bed, dropping a kiss on her mother's forehead. The skin felt warm, not quite fever warm, but enough to add another worry to Aurora's growing collection. Oh, please, I've done enough resting to last 3 lifetimes. Elizabeth patted the bed beside her. Tell me about work instead. Any handsome princes sweep you off your feet yet? Aurora's mind flashed to steel gray eyes and the scent of expensive cologne. She pushed the thought away firmly. Mom, not every story needs a prince. No, but they're much more fun with one. Elizabeth's knowing smile faded as she studied her daughter's face. You look tired, baby. Are you taking double shifts again? I'm fine. Aurora busied herself arranging the fresh flowers she'd brought, simple daisies from the corner store, all she could afford after paying the electricity bill. Dr. Carlton called about moving up your treatment. Elizabeth's expression turned serious. Aurora Marie Jensen, don't you dare take on more hours for my sake. I mean it. It's just temporary. Aurora forced brightness into her voice. Besides, the tips at the Royal Palm are really good right now. We've got all these VIP events. The same events where that CEO has been watching you? Aurora's head snapped up. How did you? Mrs. Rodriguez tells me things. Elizabeth's eyes twinkled, with familiar mischief. Like how this mysterious billionaire keeps requesting you specifically for service. Heat crept up Aurora's neck. After the disaster in the penthouse suite 2 nights ago, Maddox had indeed made a point of requesting her for his table, though their interactions remained rigidly professional, charged with an undercurrent of something she refused to analyze. "It's not like that," she muttered. "He's just trying to make up for a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that made you come home looking like you'd seen a ghost." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "Or swallowed a thundercloud." Before Aurora could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Dr. Carlton entered, his usual warm smile shadowed with concern as he reviewed the chart in his hands. "Good morning, ladies." He nodded to them both. "Aurora, I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss the treatment schedule." Aurora's stomach clenched. She knew that tone. It was the same one he'd used when first delivering the diagnosis. "What's wrong?" "The latest tests show the disease is progressing faster than we anticipated." He met her eyes directly, kind but unflinching. "If we don't start the new treatment protocol by Monday, we risk—" "Monday?" Aurora's voice cracked. "But you said Friday was the deadline for the deposit." "The lab results changed our timeline." Dr. Carlton's expression held genuine regret. "I know, this puts you in a difficult position. But medically speaking, we can't afford to wait." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Monday, 3 days earlier than planned. The deposit she hadn't managed to scrape together even for Friday's deadline now needed to be paid by the end of tomorrow. "How much?" The words felt like glass in her throat. Dr. Carlton named a figure that made her ears ring. It might as well have been $1 million. The gap between what she had saved and what they needed was an uncrossable chasm. "I'll figure something out." Aurora was surprised by how steady her voice sounded even as her world crumbled around her. "Just tell me where to sign." "Baby, no." Elizabeth reached for her hand. "We can look at other options. Maybe a different hospital or—" "There are no other options." Aurora squeezed her mother's fingers gently. "Dr. Carlton is the best, and you're not leaving Mount Sinai." The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork and medical terminology. Aurora nodded in all the right places, signed all the right forms, pretended she wasn't doing mental calculations. That always ended in disaster. "I have to get to work," she said finally, gathering her purse. "Mrs. Rodriguez will be here soon for the afternoon shift." Elizabeth caught her arm as she turned to leave. "Promise me you won't do anything reckless." Aurora managed to smile. When have I ever been reckless? But as she walked through the hospital parking lot, her mind raced through increasingly desperate options. Her credit was maxed out. She had no assets to sell. The few friends who might have helped were struggling themselves in Miami's expensive reality. Her phone chimed with a text from Mr. Richards. "Mr. Hale's party tonight expects premium service. Your section, as requested." Aurora stared at the message, something cold and determined settling in her chest. Maddox Hale had made it clear he found her interesting, had gone out of his way to keep her in his orbit since the night in the suite. Men like him were used to buying whatever caught their attention. The thought made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to consider it clinically. She wouldn't sell herself, never that, but perhaps she could sell her pride. One carefully worded request for help, one strategic show of vulnerability to a man who could solve her problems with the stroke of a pen. "Don't you dare," she whispered to herself, echoing her mother's words. But the hospital loomed behind her and the deadline pressed against her throat like a blade. Her phone chimed again. A reminder from the hospital's billing department. Payment due by 5 p.m. tomorrow for priority treatment schedule. Aurora closed her eyes, remembering her mother's smile, the way she still read romance novels and believed in happy endings, despite everything life had thrown at them. The way she'd sacrificed everything to raise Aurora alone, working 3 jobs and never complaining. Now it was Aurora's turn to sacrifice. She opened her eyes, squared her shoulders, and headed for the bus stop. She had 8 hours until Maddox Hale's party began. 8 hours to decide if she could swallow enough pride to beg for help from a man who'd once mistaken her for something she could never be. The Miami sun beat down mercilessly as she waited for the bus, but Aurora barely felt it. She was too busy building walls around her heart, preparing herself for what the night might require. Because in the end, pride wouldn't save her mother, and Aurora Jensen would walk through fire, would swallow every ounce of her fierce independence, would humble herself before the Ice King himself, if that's what it took to keep her mother's heart beating. The Royal Palms employee locker room felt suffocating as Aurora adjusted her uniform for the third time. Her reflection in the narrow mirror showed everything in perfect order. Hair smoothed into an elegant twist, makeup subtle but flawless, collar starched and pristine. Only her eyes betrayed the war raging inside her. "You're on fire tonight, girl." Monica leaned against the lockers, watching Aurora apply a final coat of mascara. "I've never seen you wear the good makeup to work before." Aurora carefully recapped the tube, a drugstore splurge from better days. "Important party upstairs. Mr. Richards wants us looking extra professional." "Professional?" Monica snorted. "Honey, that's not professional makeup. That's notice me makeup." She paused, her expression turning serious. "This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain CEO who keeps requesting you, would it?" "Of course not." The denial came too quickly, too sharply. Aurora busied herself organizing her locker, avoiding her friend's knowing gaze. "Just be careful." Monica's voice softened. "Men like Maddox Hale don't date girls like us. They play with us." "I'm counting on it," Aurora thought, the idea bitter as medicine on her tongue. Out loud, she said, "I can handle myself." "Really?" Monica crossed her arms. "Because the Aurora I know would never wear that perfume to serve drinks. The Aurora I know keeps every rich guy at arm's length. So either you've had a personality transplant or you're up to something." Aurora closed her locker with more force than necessary. "Maybe I'm tired of keeping everyone at arm's length. Maybe I'm tired of being practical and proud and perfect all the time. Or maybe you're desperate about something." Monica caught her arm as she turned to leave. "Talk to me. Whatever it is, it's nothing." Aurora gentled her voice, managing a smile. "I promise, I just want to look nice tonight." The lie felt heavy in her mouth, but it was easier than explaining the truth, that her mother's life hung by a thread measured in dollars, that she'd spent her lunch break researching Maddox Hale's charitable giving, that she was about to do the one thing she'd sworn she'd never do, use her looks to manipulate a man's interest. The elevator ride to the penthouse level gave her time to settle into character, not the efficient professional server she usually presented, but something softer, more vulnerable. A woman who might need saving, who might appeal to a billionaire's hero complex. The thought made her skin crawl. The private dining room was already full when she entered. A dozen of Miami's most powerful people gathered around a table worth more than her yearly salary. Maddox sat at the head, his usual aura of authority somehow amplified in the intimate setting. He looked up as she approached, and Aurora felt the familiar jolt of electricity when their eyes met. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. At her slightly softer appearance, perhaps, or recognition of the subtle changes in her presentation. "Good evening, Mr. Hale." She kept her voice low, meant for his ears alone as she leaned in to place his preferred scotch. "Is there anything special you need tonight?" The double meaning hung in the air between them. Aurora held her breath, waiting for him to acknowledge the shift in their dynamic, the careful invitation in her tone. Instead, his eyes narrowed slightly. "You're different tonight." "Am I?" She straightened slowly, letting him see the careful mask she'd constructed. "I thought this was what men like you preferred. Something a little more approachable." Maddox's expression hardened, and Aurora realized with a sinking feeling that she'd miscalculated. "A moment of your time, Ms. Jensen. In private." It wasn't a request. Aurora followed him to a small alcove off the main room, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't how she'd planned to play this. She'd wanted subtle hints, careful suggestions, not this direct confrontation. "What are you doing?" His voice was soft but intense, pitched low to avoid carrying. "I don't know what you don't." The word cut like a blade. "You haven't looked me in the eye since you walked in. You're wearing perfume. You've changed your makeup, your hair, even the way you move. So I'll ask again, what game are you playing?" Aurora felt her carefully constructed facade cracking. Of course he'd see through it. He hadn't built an empire by being easily manipulated. It's not a game. The words scraped her throat raw. I need help? His tone was dangerously gentle now. And you thought the best way to get it was to transform yourself into what you imagine I want. Humiliation burned through her, hot as fever. You thought wrong. Maddox stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The woman who stood in my suite and told me she wasn't for sale? Who looked me in the eye and demanded respect? That woman interested me. This performance? He gestured to her altered appearance. This insults us both. Aurora felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. You don't understand, my mother is ill, yes, I know. At her startled look, he smiled grimly. I make it my business to know things, Ms. Jensen, just as I know about the treatment deadline that's causing this unprecedented behavior. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. You've been investigating me? Of course I have. He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You fascinated me. A woman with your looks, your intelligence, working double shifts instead of taking the easy routes available to her? I wanted to understand why. Aurora wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her appearance. And now you do. I'm just another desperate person looking for a handout. No. Maddox's hand moved as if to touch her face, then dropped. You're a woman who'd rather destroy her own pride than fail the person she loves. It's admirable. Misguided, but admirable. Admirable doesn't pay medical bills. The words came out sharper than intended, raw with frustrated tears. No, he agreed softly. But neither does this attempt at manipulation. Did you really think I wouldn't see through it? Aurora closed her eyes, all the fight draining out of her. I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked. His voice held an emotion she couldn't quite identify. Directly, honestly, like the Aurora Jensen I've been watching for weeks would have done. I didn't want... She stopped, forcing herself to face the truth. I didn't want to give you that power over me. And this charade would have given me less. The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Aurora had no answer. She felt stripped bare, all her careful plans lying in ruins at her feet. I should go. Yes. Maddox stepped back, creating space between them. Go wash off that makeup. Fix your hair the way you usually wear it. Then come back and do your job the way you always have, with pride and competence. We'll discuss your mother's situation afterward. Hope fluttered in her chest, dangerous as a trapped bird. Mr. Hale and Aurora. He caught her arm as she turned to leave, his touch sending electricity through her skin. Don't ever try to be what you think I want again. The reality of you is far more intriguing than any performance. She fled to the employee restroom, her hands shaking as she scrubbed away the careful makeup, pulled her hair back into its usual simple style. In the mirror, her own face stared back at her, bare, vulnerable, real. Maddox was right. She'd been willing to sell not just her pride, but her very self. The thought made her stomach turn. But as she straightened her uniform and prepared to return to the party, a new understanding settled over her. Maddox Hale might be willing to help her mother, but he'd extract a different kind of price, one measured not in dollars or sexual currency, but in truth, in vulnerability, in letting him see the real Aurora Jensen, with all her fierce pride and desperate love and burning need to stand on her own 2 feet. The question was, could she pay that price? Could she let him in? Let him see her weakness, her need, her humanity? The answer waited in her mother's hospital room, in the deadline hanging over their heads like a sword. Yes. For Elizabeth, she could do anything. Even tell the truth. The Miami night sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of Maddox's private office, but Aurora barely noticed the view. She sat perched on the edge of an leather armchair that probably cost more than her car, her fingers twisted together in her lap. The party had ended an hour ago, leaving them alone in the rarefied air of the top floor. Maddox stood at a sleek, wet bar, his suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to reveal powerful forearms. The casual domesticity of watching him pour 2 glasses of water felt more intimate than any of her earlier attempted seduction. Your mother's medical bills. He set a glass in front of her, then settled into the chair across from her with fluid grace. Tell me everything. Aurora wrapped her fingers around the crystal tumbler, grateful for something to hold. I thought you already knew everything. Isn't that what your investigation found? I know the facts. His gray eyes held steady on her. Porta, I want to hear the truth from you. No masks this time. She took a slow sip of water, using the moment to gather her thoughts. The initial diagnosis came 18 months ago. I had just started here at the Royal Palm. Mom was still working then, real estate agent always chasing the next big commission. A smile tugged at her lips despite everything. She was so good at it, you know? People just trusted her, wanted to make her happy. Like mother, like daughter, Maddox murmured. Aurora's head snapped up, but his expression revealed nothing. She pressed on. The first rounds of treatment weren't too bad. Insurance covered most of it. But then, her throat tightened. The insurance company found a loophole, pre-existing, condition they claimed wasn't properly disclosed. They dropped us. And that's when you took the second job at the cafe. And the weekend shifts at the boutique on Ocean Drive. Aurora's laugh held no humor. Though I had to quit that one, when Mom got worse. Couldn't be that far from the hospital. Maddox leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. The position brought him closer, and Aurora caught the faint scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that made her heart skip. The new treatment protocol Dr. Carlton wants to start. Tell me about that. How do you know about... She stopped herself. Right, the investigation. Would it make you feel better to know I had Carlton vetted? He's legitimate, one of the best in his field. Somehow that makes it worse. Aurora set down her glass, the crystal making a sharp sound against the desk. That you know so much about my life, while I know nothing about yours. That you've been watching, planning. Planning? One dark eyebrow lifted. What exactly do you think I've been planning, Ms. Jensen? I don't know. She met his gaze directly. But men like you don't investigate women like me without a reason. Men like me? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. And what kind of man do you think I am? The kind who's used to buying whatever he wants. The words came out before she could stop them, sharp with remembered humiliation. The kind who mistakes waitresses for escorts because it's happened before. Maddox was on his feet in one fluid motion, moving to the window. His reflection in the glass was impossible to read. That night in the suite, you think I arranged it, didn't you? No. He turned back to her, and the raw honesty in his expression made her breath catch. Victoria was trying to curry favor. She knows my history with women in service positions. Thought she could orchestrate something I'd appreciate. Your history? Aurora's mouth went dry. My mother was a waitress. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. She worked 3 jobs to put me through college, died before she could see me graduate Harvard. Aurora felt the world tilt beneath her feet. I didn't know. Few people do. He moved back to his chair, his movements controlled but carrying an undercurrent of tension. It's not in the official biography. Bad for the Ice King image, I suppose. Is that why you've been watching me? Because I remind you of her? God, no. His laugh was short, almost harsh. You couldn't be more different. My mother was gentle, suffered in silence. You? His eyes raked over her, hot as a physical touch. You burn with everything you feel, fight with every breath. It's extraordinary. Heat bloomed in Aurora's chest, spreading through her limbs like wildfire. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just surviving. Surviving would be finding a rich man to solve your problems. God knows you've had offers. His voice held an edge she couldn't quite read. but you'd rather work yourself to exhaustion than take the easy way out. Why? Because I am not for sale. The words emerged fierce, automatic. My pride, my independence, my self-respect, they're all I have. And yet you came to me tonight, ready to trade them away. Shame burned in her throat. Because I love my mother more than my pride. Because watching her suffer is worse than any humiliation. Tears pricked at her eyes. Because sometimes being strong means knowing when to bend. Silence stretched. Between them, heavy with unspoken things. Outside, Miami's lights twinkled like earthbound stars, indifferent to the drama unfolding in their glow. $800,000. Maddox's voice was very quiet. Aurora's heart stopped. What? The full course of treatment, including aftercare and rehabilitation. That's what it would take to save your mother's life. She felt dizzy, the number spinning in her head like a roulette wheel. I can't. I know. He leaned forward again, his presence filling her senses. That's why I'm going to pay it. The world seemed to pause, reality suspended in the space between heartbeats. Why? Because you fascinate me. His honesty was brutal, beautiful. Because I want to see what you become when you're not crushed under the weight of impossible choices. Because... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Because I want to know who Aurora Jensen is when she's not fighting, for survival. And what do you want in return? The question emerged as barely a whisper. Dinner? Aurora blinked. What? Have dinner with me. Not as a waitress, not as someone who owes me anything. Just dinner. One evening of absolute honesty between us. Just dinner? Suspicion warred with hope in her chest. No strings? The only string is truth. His eyes held hers, unflinching. I'll transfer the money tonight before we eat. Your mother's treatment starts tomorrow as scheduled. All I want is one meal where you're not serving me, not fighting me, not trying to manipulate me, just you, the real you. Aurora felt tears spill down her cheeks, too overwhelmed to be embarrassed by them. Why would you do this, really? Maddox reached across the space between them, his thumb brushing away a tear with impossible gentleness. Because sometimes being strong means knowing when to help someone else bend. She closed her eyes, leaning slightly into his touch. The gesture was tiny, but it felt like surrender, like trust, like the first step onto a path she couldn't see the end of. Yes, she whispered. To dinner, to truth, to whatever this is. His hand dropped away, but she could feel the ghost of his touch lingering on her skin. Tomorrow night, then. I'll have a car pick you up after your mother's first treatment. Aurora opened her eyes to find him watching her with an expression that made her heart race. What should I wear? Whatever the real Aurora Jensen wants to wear. His smile held a warmth she'd never seen before. I think it's time we both met her. As she gathered her things to leave, exhaustion and hope warring in her bones, Aurora realized something that should have terrified her but somehow didn't. Maddox Hale might have bought her mother's survival, but he'd won something far more valuable. He'd won her truth. The setting sun painted Mount Sinai Medical Center in shades of amber and rose, but Aurora barely noticed the beauty. She was too focused on her mother's radiant smile, on the color returning to Elizabeth's cheeks after her first advanced treatment. The nurse says your mysterious benefactor called 3 times today to check on the procedure. Elizabeth's eyes sparkled with familiar mischief. Want to tell me how last night really went? Aurora busied herself adjusting the fresh flowers. On the bedside table, proper roses this time, not corner store daisies. Nothing happened, Mom, we just talked. Talked? Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. About an $800,000 conversation if what Dr. Carlton told me is true. I didn't ask for the money. Aurora's voice came out sharper than intended. She softened it with effort. He offered. Said he wanted one dinner in return. Just dinner. Just dinner with a handsome billionaire who's been watching you for weeks? Elizabeth's laugh turned into a small cough, and Aurora immediately reached for the water glass. Her mother waved her away. "I'm fine, baby. Better than fine, thanks to your Mr. Hale." "He's not my Mr. Hale." "No?" Elizabeth's expression turned serious. "Then why did you spend 20 minutes in front of my bathroom mirror trying on different lipsticks?" Aurora felt heat creep up her neck. She had indeed raided her mother's makeup bag, searching for something that felt right for tonight. Not the overdone glamour of her failed seduction attempt, but not her usual minimal work face either. "I just want to look nice." She smoothed her sundress, a simple white cotton thing with tiny blue flowers, worn only once before to a friend's wedding. "Professional." "Professional?" Elizabeth snorted. "Honey, that's your first date dress. The one you said made you feel pretty but not like you were trying too hard." She patted the bed beside her. "Come here. Let me fix your hair before your car arrives." Aurora settled onto the edge of the hospital bed, letting her mother's gentle fingers work through her blonde waves. The familiar touch soothed something raw inside her. "You're allowed to like him, you know," Elizabeth said softly. "Even if he helped us, maybe especially because he helped us." "It's not that simple." Aurora closed her eyes, leaning into her mother's touch. "He investigated me, Mom. Had people watching me. Who does that?" "Someone who was intrigued enough to want to understand you." Elizabeth's hand stilled. "Someone who cared enough to make sure the doctor he was paying for was the best. Someone who's called this hospital 3 times today not to check on his investment, but to make sure I was comfortable." Before Aurora could respond, a knock at the door made them both look up. A nurse stood in the doorway looking slightly starstruck. "Ms. Jensen, your car is here, and, She held out a small cream-colored envelope. "This was delivered for you." Aurora opened it with trembling fingers, aware of her mother's eager gaze. Inside was a simple note, handwritten in elegant script. "The real Aurora Jensen, exactly as she is at 8 p.m. "Mom." "Well?" Elizabeth prompted when Aurora just stared at the note. "What does your Ice King say?" "He's not my—" Aurora stopped, laughing despite herself. "He just gave me a time, and a reminder to be myself." "Smart man." Elizabeth reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind Aurora's ear. "He knows that's more than enough." The drive to the restaurant passed in a blur of Miami lights and nervous anticipation. The car, a sleek black Mercedes with buttery leather seats, wound through the city's glittering streets until it reached a small, elegant building in South Beach. "Le Petit Jardin," the driver announced, opening her door. "Mr. Hale is waiting, in the private garden." Aurora's heartbeat quickened as she followed a hostess through the intimate restaurant. The main dining room was beautiful, all soft lighting and white tablecloths, but they bypassed it entirely. A set of French doors opened onto a hidden courtyard, where tropical flowers climbed the walls and tiny lights twinkled in the gathering dusk. Maddox stood as she approached their secluded table. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, but he'd left off the tie, his collar open at the throat. The casual touch made him look somehow more approachable, though no less devastating. "Aurora," her name in his voice sent shivers down her spine. "You look—" He trailed off, and she felt a moment of panic. "Is something wrong?" "No." His eyes traveled over her, not the predatory gaze she'd feared, but something softer, almost wondering. "You look exactly like yourself. It's perfect." Heat bloomed in her cheeks as he held her chair, his fingers brushing her bare shoulder as she sat. The touch felt electric, charged with possibility. "How is your mother?" He took his own seat, his expression genuinely concerned. "The doctor said the first treatment went well, but I wanted to hear it from you." Aurora's throat tightened unexpectedly. "You really did call 3 times to check on her?" "Of course." He looked surprised that she'd doubted it. "I told you, Aurora, no masks tonight. That includes questioning my genuine concern for Elizabeth's welfare." "I'm not used to it." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. "People caring. helping without wanting something in return. I do want something in return. His voice dropped lower, intimate in the garden's soft light. I want to know you, the real you. No waitress uniform, no brave face, no walls. The walls are part of who I am. She met his gaze steadily. They're how I survived. Then tell me about that. He leaned forward, his presence filling her senses. Tell me how Aurora Jensen became the woman who'd work 3 jobs instead of taking the easy way out, who'd rather serve drinks to billionaires than marry one, who looks at a man worth billions and sees. What exactly? A man who's just as afraid of being used as I am. The words emerged without conscious thought, raw with truth. Something flashed in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or respect. And there she is, the real Aurora Jensen. He lifted his wine glass. To honesty between survivors. Aurora raised her own glass, the crystal catching the fairy lights strung above them. To walls coming down. Slowly. Slowly, he agreed, his smile warming his entire face. We have time. And sitting there in the magical garden, watching Miami's most powerful man look at her like she was something precious rather than something to possess, Aurora felt the first of her walls begin to crumble. Not from force or seduction or desperation, but from the simple power of being seen, really seen exactly as she was. The real Aurora Jensen was finally ready to be known. Steam rose from Aurora's coffee cup as she sat in the Royal Palms employee break room, trying to focus on Monica's excited chatter, but her mind kept drifting back to last night's dinner, the way Maddox's eyes had softened when she told him about her childhood dreams of becoming a writer, how his laugh had transformed his entire face when she described her disastrous first day as a waitress. Earth to Aurora! Monica waved a hand in front of her face. Girl, you haven't heard a word I've said, have you? Sorry. Aurora wrapped her fingers tighter around the warm cup. I'm just tired. Late night. Monica's knowing smile grew wider. Would this late night have anything to do with why the Ice King's private car was seen leaving Le Petit Jardin? Or why you're wearing the same dreamy expression my teenage daughter gets over boy band posters? I'm not. Aurora stopped, catching her own reflection in the break room's scratched mirror. She did look different. Softer somehow, despite the shadows of exhaustion under her eyes. It was just dinner. Just dinner? Monica raised an eyebrow. The same way he just paid for your mother's entire medical treatment? Aurora's spine stiffened. How did you... Honey, the whole hotel is talking about it. The mysterious billionaire who swept in to save the pretty waitress's sick mother? Monica's expression turned serious. It's like something out of a movie that usually ends with the pretty waitress getting her heart broken. It's not like that. Aurora set down her cup with more force than necessary. We're not what? Dating? Falling for each other? Monica leaned forward. Because I saw the way he looked at you last week when you were serving his table. That man wants more than dinner conversation. Before Aurora could respond, the break room door swung open. Mr. Richard stood there, his round face flushed with excitement. Jensen, thank God you're here early. The Preston wedding party had a last-minute venue change due to the weather forecast. They're moving the reception to our ballroom tonight. He thrust a stack of papers at her. I need you to handle the transition. You're the only one I trust to manage it properly. Aurora took the papers automatically, her heart sinking as she saw the complexity of the arrangements. But sir, I'm supposed to be off at 6. My mother's doctor. Already taken care of. Richards beamed. Mr. Hale called personally to say he's arranged for your mother's evening appointment to be moved to tomorrow morning. Said something about making sure you had the flexibility to handle this. Really, Jensen, having friends in high places suits you. He bustled away, leaving Aurora staring at the papers in her hands. Monica whistled low. Rearranging your mother's medical schedule so you can work late? She shook her head. That's some next-level controlling behavior, girl. He was trying to help. But something cold settled in Aurora's stomach. Had Maddox really called her mother's doctor without discussing it with her first? The day passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Aurora threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction from her conflicted thoughts. By late afternoon, the ballroom was transformed, white roses and crystal centerpieces gleaming under the chandeliers, everything perfect for the wealthy bride's rescheduled reception. Beautiful job. The voice behind her made her jump. She turned to find Maddox standing in the ballroom doorway, looking devastating in a navy suit that made his gray eyes seem stormy. Though I'm not surprised. You have an eye for detail. What are you doing here? Aurora glanced around, but the room was empty, the calm before the wedding storm. I wanted to see you. He moved closer, his presence filling her senses. And to make sure you weren't upset about the schedule change. I know how important your mother's appointments are, but when Richards called about needing his best person for this event, you should have asked me first. The words came out sharper than intended. My mother's care isn't something you get to reorganize without consulting me. Maddox's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. You're right. I apologize. I'm not used to consulting others about my decisions. Clearly. Aurora crossed her arms, but found her anger softening at his genuine contrition. I understand you were trying to help, but my independence matters to me, even more now that she swallowed hard, now that I owe you so much. You owe me nothing. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the tiny flecks of silver in his gray eyes. The money was a gift, not a debt, not a way to control you. Then why did you do it? She lifted her chin, forcing herself to hold his intense gaze. The truth this time. All of it. Maddox was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if memorizing every detail. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost raw. Because from the moment you stood in my suite and refused to be bought, I knew you were different. Special. Because watching you fight so hard, care so deeply, shine so brightly despite everything life threw at you, it made me feel something I haven't felt in years. What? The word was barely a whisper. Hope. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin with exquisite gentleness. Hope that not everyone in my world is trying to manipulate me. That real connections still exist. That maybe, just maybe, there's one person who could want me for myself and not my bank account. Aurora's heart thundered in her chest. She should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself leaning slightly into his touch. And what if you're wrong? Her voice trembled. What if I'm not that person? Then I'll have the memory of one perfect dinner where we were both completely real with each other. His other hand came up, framing her face. But somehow I don't think I'm wrong. The air between them crackled with electricity, with possibility, with danger. Aurora felt herself swaying forward, drawn by the magnetic pull of his presence. A crash from the hallway shattered the moment. They jumped apart as catering staff began streaming in with tables and chairs, the wedding machinery grinding into motion. I should go. Maddox's voice was slightly rough. You have work to do, and I'm only getting in the way. Wait. Aurora caught his arm as he turned to leave. About my mother's appointment. I'll have it changed back. He covered her hand with his, the touch sending sparks through her skin. No more rearranging your life without permission. I promise. She nodded, finally releasing him. Thank you. He paused at the doorway, looking back at her with an expression that made her breath catch. Have dinner with me again tomorrow? Not because you owe me. Not because of any obligation. Just because I miss hearing the real Aurora Jensen's laugh. And despite every warning voice in her head, despite Monica's concerned words and her own lingering fears, Aurora found herself smiling. Yes. As she watched him leave, his powerful presence parting the sea of busy staff like Moses through the Red Sea, Aurora realized she was in dangerous waters. Because somewhere between that first confrontation in his suite and last night's intimate dinner, something had shifted. She was no longer just grateful to Maddox Hale, no longer just intrigued by him. She was falling for him. And that terrified her more than any amount of debt ever could. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Mount Sinai Medical Center as Aurora hurried down the familiar corridor, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She was already running late for her evening shift at the Royal Palm, but the worry in her mother's voice during their morning call had demanded a visit. She found Elizabeth sitting up in bed, clutching a newspaper with trembling hands. The sight stopped Aurora cold, not because her mother was reading, but because of the expression on her face. "Mom, what's wrong?" Elizabeth wordlessly held out the paper. The Society page headline made Aurora's blood run cold. Miami's ice. King melts. Billionaire Maddox Hale's latest charity case. Below was a photo of her and Maddox at Le Petit Jardin, clearly taken through the garden's foliage. The article spared no detail, from her mother's illness to her multiple jobs, from the exact amount Maddox had paid for the treatment to speculation about their growing relationship. "It's not what it looks like," Aurora said automatically, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. "Really?" Elizabeth's voice was gentle but firm. "Because it looks like your private life has become very public. And it looks like someone is trying very hard to paint you as a gold digger who manipulated a billionaire's conscience." Aurora sank into the bedside chair, her legs suddenly weak. The article was cruel in its calculated politeness, praising Maddox's generosity while subtly suggesting Aurora had orchestrated the entire situation. It even mentioned her failed attempt at seduction in his suite, though the details were deliberately vague. Only a few people knew about that night. Aurora's voice shook. The woman in red, Victoria, she must have given the story to the press. Elizabeth reached for her hand. The question is why now? And did Maddox know this was coming? Before Aurora could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Monica. "Turn on Channel 7 now." Aurora grabbed the remote with trembling fingers, switching on the small hospital room TV. The local news was running an exclusive about Maddox's charitable giving, focusing heavily on his latest investment in a young waitress's future. Sources close to the billionaire suggest this isn't the first time Hale has taken a special interest in service industry workers, the reporter said with a knowing smile, though previous recipients of his generosity have been notably more discreet. Oh God. Aurora felt the room spin. Everything she'd feared, everything she'd tried to protect herself from was playing out on screens across Miami. Her phone buzzed again. Maddox's private number. She let it go to voicemail, unable to face him right now. "Baby." Elizabeth's voice cut through her panic. "Look at me. Are you falling in love with him?" The question hit like a physical blow. Aurora closed her eyes, fighting tears. "It doesn't matter now. It's the only thing that matters." Elizabeth squeezed her hand. "Because if this is just gratitude or attraction, walk away now. But if you're falling in love with him, then what?" Aurora's laugh was bitter. "Stay and be Miami's favorite scandal? Let everyone believe I seduced him for his money? Watch my private life become public entertainment? Fight for what's real." Elizabeth's voice strengthened. "If what you feel for each other is genuine, fight for it. Show them all what the real Aurora Jensen is made of." A knock at the door made them both jump. A nurse stood there looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Jensen, there are reporters in the lobby. Hospital security is handling it, but you might want to use the staff exit when you leave." Aurora's phone buzzed yet again, Mr. Richards this time. "Jensen, don't come in tonight. Media circus at the front entrance. Paid leave until this dies down." The walls seemed to close in. Everything she'd worked for, every careful step she'd taken to build a life on her own terms, was crumbling around her. "I have to go." She stood on shaky legs, gathering her purse. "Mom, I..." "Go to him." Elizabeth's eyes were fierce with maternal protection. Make him explain, make him fix this, make him prove he deserves your heart. Aurora slipped out through the hospital's service entrance, grateful for the knowledge gained from countless late-night visits. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages from coworkers, from old friends, from numbers she didn't recognize. She was so focused on avoiding being seen that she almost ran straight into the broad chest blocking her path to the parking lot. Aurora. Maddox's voice was rough, with emotion, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. She stepped back, taking in his appearance. The perfectly tailored suit was slightly rumpled, his hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. For the first time, he looked less than completely controlled. Did you know? The words scraped her throat raw. About the article? The news story? No. His gray eyes blazed with barely contained fury. But I know who did it. Victoria has connections to certain media outlets. When she realized how serious I was about you, serious about me, Aurora's laugh held an edge of hysteria. Is that what this looks like to you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm just the latest in a long line of charity cases. How many other women have you helped, Maddox? How many other desperate service workers caught your eye? It wasn't like that. He reached for her, but she stepped further back. Those were legitimate charitable donations through my foundation. It's different. Why? Because you actually got personally involved this time? Because you decided to add dinner dates to your usual philanthropy? Because I'm falling in love with you. The words exploded between them, echoing in the empty parking lot. Aurora felt them like a physical blow. Don't. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold herself together. Don't say that, not now. Not when everyone in Miami is betting on how long it'll take the pretty waitress to break the Ice King's heart. Or his bank account. I don't care. What they think. Maddox moved closer, his presence overwhelming even in the open air. Let them talk. Let them speculate. The only thing that matters is what's real between us. And what is real? Aurora felt tears spill down her cheeks. How can I know? How can I trust my own feelings when you've paid my mother's medical bills? When my entire life depends on your generosity? Your life depends on your own strength. His voice softened, filled with something that made her heart ache. The money. It was never about buying you, Aurora. It was about giving you the freedom to choose. To be with me because you want to, not because you need to. And now everyone thinks I manipulated you into it. She swiped at her tears angrily, that I played some calculated game to win your attention. Then let's show them the truth. He closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face. Come away with me, right now. Let me take you somewhere we can figure this out, away from the cameras, away from the speculation. Just us, being real with each other like that first dinner. Aurora looked up into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the genuine emotion. It would be so easy to say yes. To let him whisk her away from the media circus. To hide in some luxury resort until the storm passed. But that would only confirm everyone's worst assumptions. I can't. The words felt like glass in her throat. I can't run away. I can't hide. And I can't. She took a shuddering breath. I can't be with you, not like this, not with all these doubts. Aurora, please. For the first time, she heard real fear in his voice. Don't let them win. Don't let their lies destroy what we could have. What we could have needs to grow in the light. She stepped back from his touch, feeling the loss like a physical wound. Not in hiding, not under this shadow of scandal and speculation. I need time, space, a chance to know my own heart without the whole world watching and waiting. For me to fail. Something shuddered in his eyes. The Ice King's mask slipped back into place, though she could see the cracks in it now. How much time? I don't know. Aurora wrapped her arms tighter around herself. Until the media circus dies down. Until I can stand on my own feet again. Until I'm sure that what I feel for you is real and not just gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome. The joke fell flat between them. Maddox's jaw tightened, but he nodded once, sharply. Your mother's treatment is secure, he said. his voice carefully controlled. "The hospital has strict instructions, and your job at the Royal Palm. I'll handle my own job." She lifted her chin. "That's what space means, Maddox. Let me handle my own life. Let me find my own way back to you if that's where I'm meant to be." He looked at her for a long moment, as if memorizing her face. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. She watched him go, his powerful figure disappearing into the gathering dusk. Only when she was alone did she allow herself to break down, sliding down the rough concrete wall as sobs shook her body. Because the cruelest part of all this, the part that hurt worse than the public speculation, worse than the career implications, worse than the damage to her pride, she was already in love with him, and she just pushed him away. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Aurora stood at the window of her mother's hospital room, watching Miami's endless summer rain paint patterns on the glass. The media frenzy had finally begun to die down, but the silence it left behind felt worse somehow. "He sent flowers again." Elizabeth's voice was gentle behind her. Fresh orchids arrived every morning. No card, no message. Just perfect white blooms that filled the room with their subtle fragrance. "I know." Aurora pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "He's respecting my wishes about space, but making sure I know he's thinking of us." "And you're sure those wishes are what you really want?" Aurora turned to face her mother, taking in the improved color in her cheeks, the strength returning to her voice. The new treatment was working, a miracle she couldn't regret no matter how complicated its source. "The headlines have finally stopped," she said instead of answering directly. "No more Ice King's cookie-cutter romance or waitress wins, billionaire lottery." "That's not what I asked." Elizabeth set aside her book. Another romance novel, Aurora noticed with a pang. "The headlines don't matter. What matters is that you haven't smiled in 2 weeks, really smiled, not that brave face you put on for the nurses." Before Aurora could respond, her phone buzzed. Her heart leaped before she saw it was Monica. "Girl, you need to see this. Channel 7, now." With trembling fingers, Aurora reached for the remote. The local news was running a business segment, and there was Maddox, looking devastatingly handsome but somehow harder, colder, the Ice King persona firmly in place. "Your company's new charitable foundation focuses specifically on medical care for service industry workers," the reporter was saying. "Some have suggested this is a response to recent personal events." The camera zoomed in on Maddox's face as he answered. "The foundation was in development long before recent media speculation about my private life. But yes, I've seen firsthand how hard-working Americans can be destroyed by medical debt, how pride and independence can become barriers to accepting help. The foundation aims to remove those barriers, to provide assistance without judgment or obligation." Aurora's hands flew to her mouth. He'd taken their story, their private pain, and turned it into something that could help others. "And what about the rumors that your recent involvement with a local waitress inspired this project?" Maddox's expression didn't change, but Aurora, who had learned to read the tiny shifts in his face over intimate dinners and honest conversations, saw the flash of pain in his eyes. "I don't comment on private matters," he said smoothly. "But I will say this. Sometimes it takes meeting one extraordinary person to show you how many others are fighting the same battles. One story to open your eyes to thousands of untold ones." The reporter pressed on. "And this extraordinary person, would you say she's become more than just inspiration for your charitable works?" For a moment, the Ice King mask cracked. Maddox looked directly into the camera, and Aurora felt the impact of his gaze like a physical touch. "She became everything," he said softly, "and I became better for knowing her." The segment cut away to commercial, but Aurora barely noticed. Her mother's words from weeks ago echoed in her head. "Fight for what's real." "He loves you." Elizabeth's voice was sure. "Really loves you, not just the idea of you or the chase of you. Look what he's building from the ashes of this scandal. A way to help others like us, to make sure no one else has to choose between pride and survival." "I know." Aurora's voice broke. God, Mom, I know. But I'm scared. Of what? The media? The gossip? Elizabeth struggled to sit up straighter and Aurora rushed to adjust her pillows. Baby, look at me, really look. I'm getting stronger every day because that man couldn't bear to see you suffer. He's turned your story into hope for thousands of others. And he's done it all while respecting your need for space, sending flowers but no pressure, making sure we're cared for without trying to control you. That's why I'm scared. The truth finally broke free. Because he's perfect, too perfect. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't handle his world, his life? What if... A knock at the door cut her off. Mrs. Rodriguez stood there, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Mi cielo, she said softly. Someone is here to see you. Aurora's heart stopped as Victoria stepped into the room. The woman looked flawless as ever in a designer suit, but something was different about her expression, less predatory, more uncertain. Miss Jensen. Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. May I speak with you? Privately? Aurora glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragement. The garden downstairs, she said finally. We can talk there. The hospital's small garden was empty, the rain having driven other visitors inside. Aurora led Victoria to a covered bench, maintaining careful distance between them. I leaked the story. Victoria didn't waste time with preliminaries. About you and Maddox, I thought I was protecting him. From what? Aurora's voice was ice. From someone who actually cared about him as a person, not a bank account. From himself. Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. I've known Maddox for years, watched him build walls around his heart, turn himself into the Ice King everyone expected. Then you came along, and suddenly he was vulnerable. I thought you'd destroy him. So you tried to destroy me first? Yes. Victoria met her eyes, directly. And I was wrong. What he's doing with the foundation, the way he's channeled this whole situation into something meaningful, that's not the Maddox I knew. That's the man you helped him become. Aurora said nothing, waiting. He's not eating. Victoria's voice softened. Barely sleeping. The board is worried. He's making brilliant business decisions, but he's harder, somehow, colder, like he's trying to rebuild all the walls you broke down. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you both an apology, and because... Victoria stood, brushing invisible lint from her immaculate suit. Because everyone deserves a chance at real love. Even ice kings and stubborn waitresses who are too proud to admit they're miserable without each other. She reached into her bag, withdrew an envelope. The Foundation's first major fundraiser is tonight. Black tie, all of Miami's elite. Maddox has to attend, of course. And this, she held out the envelope. This is your invitation. Your chance to show everyone that what you have is real, or to walk away for good. Aurora took the envelope with trembling fingers. Why help us now? Because I was wrong about you. Victoria's smile held genuine warmth for the first time. You didn't need his money or his power. You needed his heart. And he needed someone brave enough to claim it. She walked away, leaving Aurora alone in the rain-washed garden. The envelope felt heavy in her hands, heavier than mere paper should be, because it wasn't just an invitation to a party. It was a choice. She could stay in her safe, small world, protect her pride, avoid the spotlight. Or she could step into his world on her own terms, face the gossip and speculation head-on, fight for what they'd found together. Aurora closed her eyes, remembering the way Maddox had looked at her that first real dinner, the way he'd seen past her walls, past her pride, past her fear, the way he'd offered his heart with no guarantees of safety. Maybe it was time she did the same. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the keys before she could second-guess herself. Mom needs a beautiful dress for tonight, something worthy of a miracle. Elizabeth's reply came instantly. Finally. Now get up here so we can make you worthy of an ice king who melted just for you. Aurora smiled, really smiled. for the first time in 2 weeks, and headed back inside. She had a fundraiser to prepare for, a man to reclaim, and a love story to write on her own terms. Miami's elite wouldn't know what hit them. The ballroom of the Royal Palm had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over Miami's wealthiest and most powerful, all gathered to support the newly launched Hale Medical Foundation. Aurora stood at the entrance, her heart thundering against her ribs. "You look beautiful, baby." Elizabeth squeezed her hand, radiant in a deep blue gown that made her silver-streaked hair gleam. The wheelchair was draped elegantly in matching fabric, Mrs. Rodriguez's clever handiwork. Like a princess about to crash the ball, more like a waitress about to serve it. Aurora smoothed her hands over the white silk dress she'd found in a vintage boutique. Simple, elegant, with a timeless grace that felt authentic to who she was. No designer labels, no borrowed jewelry, just Aurora Jensen, exactly as she wanted to be seen. "Ready?" Elizabeth's eyes sparkled with maternal pride. "No." Aurora took a deep breath. "But I'm going in anyway." They made their entrance together. Mother and daughter, survivor and fighter, united in their strength. The crowd parted automatically, whispers rippling through the room like waves. Aurora held her head high, ignoring the stares and muttered comments. She'd served enough parties in this room to know its rhythm, to navigate its social currents. But tonight she wasn't here to blend into the background. Tonight she was here to stand in the light. She saw Victoria first, holding court near the champagne fountain. The woman's eyes widened slightly at Aurora's arrival. Then she offered an almost imperceptible nod of approval. Monica appeared at Aurora's elbow, resplendent in her best dress. "Girl, you've got more nerve than anyone I know." She hugged Aurora fiercely. "He's in his office, hiding from the small talk, probably, or waiting for you." "Go," Elizabeth urged, softly. "Mrs. Rodriguez and I will charm everyone down here." Aurora kissed her mother's cheek, then made her way to the service elevator, one last time using the back routes she knew so well. Her heels clicked against marble floors that had supported thousands of her steps, each one leading to this moment. Maddox's office door was closed, but light spilled from beneath it. Aurora took a final steadying breath, then knocked. "Come in." She pushed open the door to find him standing at the window, his back to her. Even from behind, she could read the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his spine beneath his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "If this is about the donor list, Richardson, I told you." He turned, and the words died in his throat. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Aurora drank in the changes 2 weeks had wrought. New lines around his eyes, a certain hardness to his jaw. The Ice King's armor rebuilt in her absence. "You came." His voice was rough with emotion. "Did you doubt I would?" Yes. The honesty between them was automatic now, impossible to resist. I thought I'd lost you, that the pressure, the media, the speculation, made me run." Aurora moved closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of his presence. "I did run, but not because of them, because I was afraid of how much I felt for you, how much I needed you, how much I—" She swallowed hard. "How much I loved you." The last of his control shattered. In 2 strides he crossed the space between them, gathering her into his arms with desperate intensity. "Say it again." His voice was barely a whisper against her hair. "I love you." The words came easily now, true as sunrise. "Not your money, not your power, not what you can do for me or my mother. Just you. The man who saw me when I was invisible, who respected my pride even when it hurt us both, who took our private pain and turned it into hope for others." Hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle. "I thought if I gave you space, if I proved I could let you go. But these weeks without you—" He rested his forehead against hers. "I've been drowning without you, Aurora. Everything I've built, everything I've accomplished means nothing if I can't share it with you. Then share it with me. She curled her fingers into his lapels. All of it. The spotlight and the shadows. The triumphs and the scandals. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of the media, not of your world, not of us. Us. He breathed the word like a prayer. God, I love how that sounds. Then say it properly. Aurora's smile held a hint of challenge. The words you've been holding back. The truth you tried to tell me that day in the parking lot. Maddox pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, his gaze intense with emotion. I love you, Aurora Jensen. Have since the moment you stood in my suite and refused to be anything but exactly who you are. Will love you through every headline, every whispered rumor, every moment of doubt. Because you make me more than the Ice King. You make me real. She rose on tiptoe, erasing the last breath of space between them. Then kiss me like I'm real. Like we're real. Like none of the rest of it matters. His lips met hers with exquisite tenderness that quickly blazed into passionate certainty. Aurora wound her arms around his neck, pouring 2 weeks of longing and love and certainty into the kiss. His hands spanned her waist, pulling her closer, as if he could erase every moment they'd spent apart. When they finally broke apart, breathing, hard, the world felt realigned, balanced, right. We should get back to the party. Aurora straightened his bow tie with gentle fingers. Your foundation needs its founder. Our foundation. Maddox caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Everything I am, everything I build is ours now. If you want it. I want you. She twined their fingers together. The rest is just details. They took the main elevator down together, a united front. As the doors opened onto the ballroom, Aurora felt the familiar wave of stares and whispers. But this time she didn't falter. This time, she had Maddox's hand anchoring her, his strength matching her own. This time she saw her mother's proud smile, Monica's delighted grin, even Victoria's approving nod. Maddox led her to the center of the room, signaling the orchestra. As the opening notes of a waltz filled the air, he turned to face her. Dance, with me? His smile held all the warmth the Ice King had supposedly never possessed. Show them all what real love looks like. Aurora stepped into his arms with the certainty of coming home. As they moved across the floor, the whispers turned to murmurs of appreciation. Because no one could look at them and see anything but truth. Anything but love. Anything but two people who had found each other across every barrier of class and circumstance. They're all watching, she murmured against his shoulder. Let them. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Let them see that the Ice King melted for love, that the waitress chose the man, not the money, that real stories don't fit in convenient headlines. Our story. Aurora lifted her face to his, smiling. Still being written. Always. Maddox's eyes shone with promise, though I think I know how this chapter ends. As his lips met hers in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by Miami's elite but lost in their own perfect world, Aurora knew he was right. This chapter ended with love winning, with truth defeating speculation, with two people choosing each other exactly as they were. But their story, their real story, it was just beginning. The sunlight streaming through the Royal Palms windows painted everything in shades of gold, much like that first night when Aurora had balanced champagne flutes and hidden her exhaustion behind a professional smile. But today she walked through the lobby not as a waitress, but as the executive director of the Hale Medical Foundation. Mrs. Hale, Monica rushed forward, enveloping her in a warm hug. I still can't believe you're letting us host the 1-year anniversary gala here. Aurora returned the embrace, smiling at the use of her new name. 3 months of marriage hadn't made it feel any less surreal. Where else would we celebrate? This is where our story began. Speaking of stories, Monica gestured to the magazine she was holding. Another society page feature, but this one was different. No scandal, No speculation, just a glowing report on the Foundation's achievements. Over 500 families helped, millions in medical, debt erased, and a revolutionary program that let service industry workers access healthcare without sacrificing their dignity. The Ice King and the Waitress, a modern fairy tale that changed Miami. Aurora read the headline aloud, shaking her head with amusement. At least they're finally getting the story right. Thanks to you proving them all wrong. Elizabeth's voice carried across the lobby as she walked toward them. Actually walked, her strength fully restored after a year of proper treatment. Though I noticed they still love that Ice King nickname, even though everyone knows Maddox is about as icy as a Miami summer. Aurora laughed, remembering how her husband had melted just that morning, watching her get ready for work. How his eyes still lit up every time she entered a room. How his touch still sent electricity through her skin. The Foundation's new headquarters looks amazing, Monica said, gesturing across the street where a modern building rose into the Miami skyline. Its ground floor housed a free medical clinic, its upper levels dedicated to the administrative work of helping others like Aurora's mother. We wanted it close to the hotel. Aurora's voice softened. To remind everyone where it all started. That sometimes the most important stories begin in the most unexpected places. A familiar presence warmed her back, strong arms sliding around her waist. Like a billionaire falling in love with a waitress who refused to be bought, Aurora leaned back into Maddox's embrace, savoring the solid strength of him. Or a waitress falling in love with a so-called Ice King who turned out to have the warmest heart in Miami. You two are still sickeningly sweet, Victoria declared, striding through the front doors in her role as the Foundation's head of public relations. But we have work to do. The anniversary gala won't plan itself. Actually, Maddox's arms tightened slightly around Aurora. I'm stealing my wife for lunch first. Doctor's orders. Aurora turned in his embrace, noting the barely contained excitement in his eyes. Doctor's orders? What are you? Just a routine checkup. His smile grew wider. Though finding out we're having twins wasn't exactly routine. The lobby erupted in squeals and congratulations. Aurora barely heard them, too lost in the joy shining in her husband's eyes. They had waited to start trying, wanting to give the Foundation a solid foundation first. Now everything was falling into place with a perfection that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Twins? Elizabeth was crying happy tears. I'm going to have 2 grandbabies? Double trouble, Maddox confirmed, his hand splaying protectively over Aurora's still flat stomach. Just like their mother, they're already overachieving. Aurora reached up to touch his face, marveling at how much love could fit in a single moment. No more Ice King jokes allowed. You're going to be a puddle when these babies arrive. I've been a puddle since the night you stood up to me in that suite. He kissed her softly, ignoring their audience. Best melting of my life. Later, as they walked hand in hand through the garden of Le Petit Jardin, their regular lunch spot now, Aurora thought about how far they had come. From stolen glances across a crowded ballroom to building a life together, from scandal headlines to success stories, from 2 people afraid to trust to partners in everything that mattered. Penny, for your thoughts? Maddox squeezed her hand. I was just thinking about fairy tales, Aurora said. How the ones we write ourselves are better than any headlines. Speaking of writing, he pulled out a small package wrapped in simple white paper. Happy early anniversary. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages blank and waiting. On the first page, Maddox had written in his elegant hand, for the real Aurora Jensen Hale, to write our next chapters together. All my love, your permanently melted Ice King. Aurora felt happy tears spill down her cheeks. Our next chapters? Twins are just the beginning. He gathered her close, his hand gentle over their growing miracles. We have a lifetime of stories ahead of us. And there, in the garden where they had first been truly honest with each other, Aurora kissed her husband and embraced their future, knowing that the best stories aren't about perfect princes or fairy godmothers granting wishes. There, about real people choosing love, about pride becoming partnership, about two hearts finding home in each other. They're about an ice king who melted for love, and a waitress who proved that true worth isn't measured in dollars but in the courage to be exactly who you are. And they're about the happy endings you write for yourself, one honest moment at a time. If you were in Aurora's shoes, would you have the courage to give up your pride for love? To face the cruel headlines and judgments of society? To fight for a true feeling? Or would you have protected yourself behind the walls you built, passing up the chance of a love that could change not only your life, but the lives of so many other people through the foundation that was born from this story? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.